Everything you believe about why you do not have money is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Not missing a piece. Completely wrong from the foundation. You believe you do not have money because you did not work hard enough, or because you were not lucky enough, or because the market was wrong, or the timing was off, or someone else got there first. And every time you think that every time you reach for one of those explanations, you are doing the one thing your brain was specifically built to do. You are running away from the real answer. And the real answer, nobody is going to say this to you, is not outside you at all. It is inside a piece of neurobiology you were born with and were never told about. And the moment you understand how it works, you will stop blaming everything else and start dismantling the actual mechanism that has been redirecting money away from you since the day you first learned what money was. But I want to warn you before we go any further. What you are about to understand cannot be unlearned. And for some of you, it is going to be the most uncomfortable thing you have ever had to sit with, because it means the problem was never out there. It was in here, the whole time. You know this pattern. You get paid. For a few days you feel it, the brief loosening in your chest. The feeling that this time you will do something different with it. This time it will stay. And then 3 weeks later, you are staring at the same number you always end up with, and you cannot explain where the rest of it went. Not really. You can name some of it. The rent, the food, the thing that broke. But the rest of it dissolved. Quietly. The way it always does. And you tell yourself it was a hard month. Next month will be different. Next year, when the salary goes up, when the job changes, when the debt is smaller. But next year comes and the number is the same. The excuses are different, but the number is the same. Stay with me, because what comes next is the piece that explains why that number never moves, no matter what you do. And somewhere in the quiet somewhere you do not say out loud to anyone, you have started to suspect that the problem is not the circumstances. The problem is you. And that suspicion is the most important thought you have ever had, because it means you are finally close to the real question. Psychologists call what you are experiencing a scarcity loop. But that clinical name does not capture what it actually feels like. What it actually feels like is this. Like money is water and your hands have holes in them. You pour more in and it runs out through the same cracks. And the cracks are invisible. And nobody taught you they were there. Seneca understood this. Not the Seneca of motivational posters. The real Seneca. The man who was simultaneously the wealthiest private citizen in Rome and the philosopher most obsessed with the psychology of poverty. Seneca was not poor. He was not an ascetic who rejected wealth. He was a man who had more money than almost anyone in the ancient world. And he spent his life studying why the people around him, including himself, were psychologically broken in their relationship with it. He wrote that it is not the man who has too little who is poor. It is the man who always craves more. And for 2,000 years, people have read that sentence as a lesson about gratitude. They missed what he was actually saying, what he was actually diagnosing. This is the part nobody teaches is a neurological state, not a character flaw. The craving he described is a survival mechanism. And survival mechanisms do not respond to willpower or intention or manifestation. They respond to one thing: understanding. And 2,000 years after Seneca, the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio proved him right with brain imaging. The emotional systems of the brain, the ancient parts that govern threat and survival, are activated by money in ways that are fundamentally irrational. Your brain does not treat money as a resource, it treats it as a threat. And when your brain detects a threat, it does what it has always done for 100,000 years. It prepares to either fight it, run from it, or make it disappear. And you have been making money disappear your entire life without once understanding why. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to show you 6 specific ways your brain is neurologically wired to reject money. Not metaphorically, not as a mindset concept, as a measurable, documented biological mechanism operating right now in every financial decision you make. And the 6th one, I need you to stay for the 6th one, because it is the one that is going to hit closest to home. But here is the warning. This is not a self-help video. I am not going to tell you to visualize abundance or rewire your subconscious with affirmations. Those are painkillers for a wound that needs surgery. And you have been treating a deep cut with painkillers for years. What I'm going to show you is the real thing. And the real thing is ugly and uncomfortable, and it will make you look at yourself and the people around you in a way that cannot be reversed. If you are not ready for that, this is not your video. But if you have spent long enough in the comfortable story and gotten nowhere, then stay. Because what comes next changes the calculation permanently. 1. The threat response. Your brain has no module for wealth. It has no evolutionary category for the concept of a bank account or a salary or an investment. Those things are 40,000 years newer than the part of your brain that governs financial behavior. What it does have is a category for scarcity and a category for surplus. And when your brain encounters surplus, the ancient system does not celebrate. It panics. This is because in the environment your brain was built for, having more than you need made you a target. The man with the extra food was the man the others came to take from. The brain's solution was precise and ruthless. Get rid of the surplus before someone takes it from you. And here is what is unbelievable. You are running this exact program today, right now. Every month, you are not doing it consciously. You are doing it through lifestyle inflation, through spontaneous generosity that feels virtuous but empties the account, through the inexplicable urgency to spend money the moment it arrives. You are not undisciplined. You are ancient. Your biology is running a program that is 60,000 years out of date, and it is costing you every single month. Look at your spending history right now, not the big purchases. Look at the pattern around payday. Look at what happens in the first 72 hours after money lands. That pattern is not you making choices. That is your threat system eliminating the target from your back. 2. The identity ceiling. This next one. This is the one most people have never heard named, and once you hear it, you will see it everywhere in your life. Your brain has a number, a specific internal number for what your life is supposed to cost, for what you are supposed to have. This number was set before you were old enough to question it. It was set by the economic reality of the household you grew up in, and your brain has spent every year since then enforcing it. Psychologists call this the set point theory of wealth. But Seneca called it something more honest. He said the soul takes on the color of its thoughts. And if the dominant thought of your childhood was that this is what we have, and this is what people like us have, then that color soaked in so deep it became the baseline your brain defends. This is why people who suddenly receive money, they did not earn an inheritance, a windfall, a settlement, almost always return to their previous financial state within 3 years. The studies on lottery winners are not about luck. They are about the identity ceiling. The brain does not know how to be the person who has that much, so it solves the dissonance the only way it knows how. It spends its way back to familiar. And you do not have to win the lottery for this mechanism to destroy you. It operates at every level. Every time you are close to saving a meaningful amount, every time you are close to breaking through into a different category of financial life, watch what happens. Watch the emergency that appears. Watch the decision that seems reasonable at the time. Watch yourself engineer a return to the number your brain considers normal. What is your number? What is the income, the account balance, the financial state that your life keeps returning to regardless of what happens? You know it. You have been living around it for years. That number is not your limit. That number is a decision your nervous system made about who you are, and decisions can be unmade. 3. The loss amplifier. The next truth is one of the most researched findings in all of behavioral economics, and it directly explains why you freeze when you should move. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist who spent his career studying why intelligent people make irrational financial decisions, established something that should be printed above every bank account in the world. The pain of losing money is approximately twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. Twice. This means that your brain is not operating on a level playing field when it comes to money. It is operating on a field that is specifically tilted toward protecting what you have rather than building more. And on a tilted field, the rational strategy is paralysis, because every move risks a loss that hurts twice as much as the equivalent gain would feel good. This is why you do not invest when you know you should. This is why you do not ask for the raise when the numbers justify it. This is why you hold on to a bad financial decision for months longer than logic demands, because exiting it would mean confirming the loss. And your brain would rather live in the fiction that it might recover than absorb the neurology of admitting it is already gone. Machiavelli understood the political version of this. He wrote that men will forgive the loss of a father more readily than the loss of an estate. He meant it as an observation about human nature, but it was also a precise description of brain chemistry that neuroscience would not verify for another 500 years. You are not risk-averse, you are not conservative, you are loss-amplified, and there is a significant difference. Risk aversion is a strategy. Loss amplification is a neurological distortion that makes you behave as though the cost of acting is always greater than the cost of staying still, even when staying still is the most expensive thing you can do. 4. The scarcity tunnel. I need you to hear the next part very carefully, because this one explains something you have probably blamed yourself for your entire life, and it was never your fault. Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir spent years studying the psychology of people under financial pressure. What they discovered was not what anyone expected. They expected to find that financial stress makes people make bad decisions. Instead, they found something far more disturbing. Financial stress makes people less intelligent, measurably, testably. When a person is under significant money pressure, their effective cognitive capacity drops by the equivalent of 13 IQ points. They literally become less capable of complex reasoning, less capable of impulse control, less capable of thinking about the future. This is the scarcity tunnel. When your brain is consumed by not having enough, it narrows. It physically concentrates cognitive resources on the immediate problem and withdraws them from everything else. Long-term planning disappears. Risk assessment collapses. The ability to see opportunities outside the immediate crisis is reduced to almost nothing. And here is what nobody tells you: the tunnel appears precisely when you most need to see clearly. It appears when the account is low, when the decision matters most, when the wrong choice will compound over months or years. That is exactly when your brain becomes least equipped to make the right one. Seneca wrote that the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, that we lose the day waiting for a year that never comes. He was describing the scarcity tunnel without knowing its neurology. The person inside the tunnel cannot think about years. They can only see today. And because they can only see today, they stay inside the tunnel. And the tunnel becomes a life. 5. The social thermostat. This next mechanism is the one that explains why the people closest to you are sometimes the most expensive thing in your financial life, and they do not even know they are doing it. Your brain monitors your financial position relative to the people immediately around you with the same precision and the same urgency that it monitors physical temperature. This is not a metaphor. This is the social comparison mechanism, and it is hardwired into the prefrontal cortex, and it is one of the most powerful regulators of financial behavior that exists. When your bank account is significantly above the people you see every day, your brain generates discomfort, not pride, discomfort. The same system that makes you feel the cold generates a signal of social displacement, of being too far from the herd, of being exposed. And the brain resolves this discomfort the way it resolves all discomfort. It moves you back toward the average. This is why so many people who begin to build real wealth unconsciously expand their lifestyle to match it. It is not greed. It is thermostat regulation. The brain recalibrates the acceptable range upward just fast enough to keep the account balance in the zone that does not trigger social anxiety, and the asset never grows, it just gets more expensive. Machiavelli spent his career observing the courts of Florence and Rome, and what he noted above everything else was that the most dangerous thing a man could do was to have visibly more than the people around him while remaining among them. The ones who survived were the ones who either changed their circle or changed their visibility. Your brain knows this, it has always known this, and it is protecting you in the only way it understands. By keeping you ordinary, by keeping you invisible, by keeping you exactly where everyone else is. Not because it wants you to fail, because it is trying to keep you safe. And safe and wealthy are not the same instruction. 6. The story that costs more than the debt. The sixth mechanism. This one is only for the people who are still watching, because most people have already left. And this is the one that goes the deepest. The first 5 mechanisms are biological. They are running beneath your awareness in the ancient wiring of the nervous system. But the 6th one is different. The 6th one is conscious, or at least half-conscious, and it is the most expensive of them all because it is the one you are actively defending. It is the story. Every person who is not building wealth has a story about why. And the story is not wrong. The story usually contains true events, a difficult beginning, a system that was stacked against them, a person who failed them, a moment when the money was taken or lost or never given. The story is real, and the story is costing them everything. Because the brain does not hold a story passively, it uses the story. It uses it as a template for interpreting every new piece of evidence. It uses it as a filter that lets in the information that confirms the story and blocks the information that challenges it. And every year the story gets stronger because every year there is new evidence that the story is true. Not because the world keeps proving it, because the brain keeps selecting for it. Seneca wrote something about this that I want you to sit with because it is one of the most important sentences ever written about money, and almost no one connects it to money. He wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But for the person with a financial story, the suffering is not imaginary. It is just mislocated. They are suffering from the story's grip on the present, not from the events of the past. And the suffering becomes the evidence. And the evidence becomes the story. And the story becomes the life. The question is not whether your story is true. It is. The question is whether you are willing to be the person who holds a true and painful story about the past and still builds a different future in spite of it. And most people are not. Most people cannot separate the identity of the person who was wronged from the possibility of the person who builds. And so the story protects them from a past that is already over by preventing a future that has not yet arrived. Most people will get this far, feel the recognition, and then go back to the comfortable story. I want to show you exactly what that comfortable story is costing you. In numbers, most people will watch everything I just showed them and feel the recognition. They will sit with the discomfort for a few minutes. They will think, yes, that is me. That is exactly what I do. And then they will close the video, go back to their day, and not change a single thing. Not because they are weak, because change at the level of neurobiology is not a decision. It is not a mindset shift. It is a restructuring. And restructuring is slow and unglamorous, and it requires that you hold your own story up to the light and look at it without flinching. Most people cannot do that. The story is too warm. The identity is too comfortable. It is easier to blame the economy or the government or the people who had more to begin with than to sit in the cold reality that the mechanism was always internal. But understand what the comfortable story costs you. It costs you every year that you remain inside the identity ceiling. It costs you every financial decision made from inside the scarcity tunnel. It cost you every opportunity you did not take because the loss amplifier told you the risk was too large. It cost you every surplus you eliminated because the threat response said you were safer without it. Seneca lived with this knowledge in one of the wealthiest households in Rome, and he still called himself a student of poverty, not because he lacked money, because he understood that the mechanisms that govern money are inside a person, not around them, and a man who has not examined those mechanisms is poor regardless of what the account says, and a man who has examined them is wealthy regardless of what the account currently contains. You cannot want your way out of this. You cannot hustle your way past neurobiology. The only exit is understanding. Cold, precise, uncomfortable understanding. The kind that makes you look at the last 5 years and see not bad luck but a pattern. And see in the pattern a mechanism, and see in the mechanism a way out. You can keep the warm story, or you can keep building. You cannot do both. Here is the part that is specifically for you, the person who stayed this far. A starting point, not a motivational quote, an actual first move. So here is what you can do with this, not the full solution. I am going to come back to the full dismantling of each mechanism in separate videos because each one deserves more than a paragraph. But here is the starting point. The one thing that begins the process of reversing every mechanism I just described. You have to name the pattern before you can interrupt it. Not in general terms. Specifically, you have to sit with your actual financial history, not the story you have about it, but the data, the numbers, the movement, the recurring moments. And you have to ask, at what number does the account always stop growing? What event always appears to reset it? What internal justification always makes the expenditure feel necessary? Whose voice is in that justification? Because the threat response, the identity ceiling, the loss amplifier, the scarcity tunnel, the social thermostat, the story, they are not invisible once you know what to look for. They leave fingerprints, and the fingerprints are in the pattern, and the pattern is in the numbers, and the numbers do not lie the way the story does. Seneca said that a man who does not know which port he is sailing for will find no wind favorable. Most people do not know their financial port because they have never examined the mechanisms that keep redirecting the ship. Once you see the mechanisms, the port becomes obvious. And once the port is obvious, every decision looks different. And what sits beneath these 6 mechanisms, the deeper architecture of why they formed in you specifically, that is a video that is coming. And it is the most important one I will make. That is a much older and much darker piece of psychology than I can cover here. But you now know enough to begin looking. If you are still here, you have already proven something. Most people leave a video like this before the 4th mechanism. Not because they are not interested, because they are too interested. Because somewhere around mechanism 2 or 3 they felt something shift and it was uncomfortable. And uncomfortable is where most people stop. You did not stop. Comment below with the mechanism that hit closest. Not for me. For yourself. Because naming the specific mechanism that describes your pattern is the first act of seeing it. And seeing it is the beginning of the only thing that actually changes anything. Subscribe if you have not, but not because I am asking. Subscribe because the next video goes deeper into the identity ceiling specifically and what the formation of that number in childhood has to do with every financial ceiling you have hit as an adult. That is not a comfortable video. That is not a hopeful video. That is the kind of video that changes the calculation. And if that is what you are here for, then you already know what to do. Most people want comfort. That is fine. That is the warm side of the binary. But if you want the other thing, stay close. Because we are only just beginning to go in.